number of friends of color who've been low income, middle income, high income, who've chosen to move away from our community because it doesn't feel comfortable for them. It doesn't feel safe. I feel that. I feel that every day, and I can only imagine what African Americans and Black people in this city also feel. Just this past weekend at the homecoming parade for our high school, a white man leaned out of his truck and yelled "white power" to a group of Black high school students. They'll keep that, those kids will keep that inside of them for the rest of their lives. Like I have kept incidents inside me for the rest of my life. This is also our community. For all the things that we should be proud of, there are some things that we need to take a hard look at and say, this isn't right. Who we are, what we're doing is not good enough. We need to critique that. Ultimately, the evaluation of whether we're anti-racist isn't about just data. It isn't about our own self-evaluation of that we're equitable. It's about whether Black and brown people want to and can live in our city. So I would also, add in closing that representation on city council, diverse representation is important to make that happen. Thank you.
We are back at Bob.
Excuse me?
Oh, I'm sorry. Did you answer that?
Batter up?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry.
That's
Go ahead,
okay.
Dan.
That's okay. You survived the causeway to come here. You deserve all of our applause. So start my clock. So this is, of course, as Bapu mentioned about the treatment of people who are here. We're not immune from racial problems. Driving while black is a real thing that affects real people. But it's also about how it affects the people who are not here, who are excluded from our community. Our housing approach is very much have to do with equity. I have fought for housing. I have fought hard for housing. It makes me unpopular in some quarters around here, but it's very important. When we had that vote on the University Mall, I was the swing vote to allow student housing across the street for the university. And some of those emails that were coming to me and my council colleagues were disparaging of students. They don't contribute anything to our community, some folks said. It was appalling. And you can't ignore the fact that at this point at UC Davis, a disproportionate number of the students, if you will, and it's a good thing, are Hispanic and Asian. They're enriching our community. And maybe folks don't understand when they are anti-student, they are putting their thumb on the racial makeup of our community. We need to bear that in mind when we think about fighting for housing in this community.
Thank you. And so I'm going to stick with the idea of housing. We know that that's really up for California in general and Davis in particular. You have specific pressures of student housing as well as people who like to stay and build a life here. And so nearly a third of the survey that I said we were going to mention, a third of respondents of a recent survey said that the city lacks affordable housing, and it's a top challenge facing Davis. So please stay solution focused, and as a city council member, what have you, or what would you, in fact, I'm going to take away what have you, what would you do in the future to ensure the city of Davis has a fair share of affordable housing? Please tell us your plans.
And who's first now?
I think we're on Bapu
Yeah,
first,
it's
because you
Bapu.
went last.
It's Bapu.
Thank you. Thanks, Kelsey. Yes, I'm a member of the Social Services Commission, was a chair, and I'm proud of the work that we've done, but there's a lot that remains to be done. Just to rattle off a quick list, we have a temporary affordable housing ordinance. It's been temporary for 5 years. Sunset Day keeps getting pushed forward, and we need to have a strong and permanent affordable housing ordinance. And I'll fight for the highest percentage of inclusionary units that economic analysis shows is feasible. Number two, we need to focus on dense, climate-friendly, affordable, transit-linked infill in our downtown. We can do that. We can do that by density bonuses, by reducing parking minimums or eliminating them entirely. We can do them by providing incentives for folks who build the kind of development that our city's values are rooted in. And finally, the Housing Trust Fund is a perfect means to do this. It's the vehicle by which other cities in California have succeeded in building affordable housing, and making sure there's a minimum balance there every year is critical. And I would just say, in terms of our vision overall, we need a general plan update. If we as a city do not say what the character of our city is as far as housing, what we want to see, then we won't attract the kind of developers, nonprofit developers, affordable housing developers that fit that vision of equity and sustainability. Thank you.
Yes, Dan.
Thank you. I have acted and voted every chance I've gotten to provide both market rate housing and the affordable housing we need in this community. I campaigned for Bretton Woods, which, besides the bungalow housing and the other units that are going in, will, with Mercy Housing, provide 150 units of affordable housing, meeting federal and state income rules for elderly and disabled persons. We are nearing completion of a new plan for our downtown that will add 1,000 market rate and other types of units for about 2,200 people over time. I voted to support funding and appropriate land use approval for Paul's Place, for the Respite Center, for expansion of YOLO Crisis Nursery. I've submitted a white paper that was included in our housing element that's now nearing final approval for a series of creative proposals to add housing, including why can't we have accessory dwelling units that are permanently affordable? Why can't we use surplus land that DJUSD has to build market rate and affordable housing for teachers and faculty? Can we clarify Measure JRD to make sure that 100% affordable housing can be approved without a public vote? And we need to find new revenues to support our Housing Trust Fund, and we've put a proposal on the table.
I absolutely agree that Davis and California's one of our top challenges is housing. I'm not sure if this question is talking about market rate affordable or specifically, dedicated low income affordable housing. But regardless of how much housing we build in Davis, there'll always be a price premium on our market rate housing, because Davis is a place that people want to live, right? Relative to our neighbors, there will always be that price premium on market rate housing, which is why it makes it so much more important that we have this focus on our dedicated low income housing, because we do not have the same ability to, build in California in general, build enough housing to lower what market rate means. Others have pointed out the downtown plan, which will, create dense infill in our core, the core of our community, which has been postponed. We had a downtown plan draft in 2019, and we just got an EIR. It's things like this that are community focused and plans that need to be pushed forward by our council rather than focusing on peripheral projects.
So why don't we go ahead and talk about, the downtown plan, and talk about some of the other elements that are in the plan. We have in the affordable housing elements in Davis, some recent and upcoming projects. Can you talk about whether or not you find them adequate? If you say they are inadequate, then talk about what would adequate look like. What specific differences would you like to see on the projects going forward, if you have any differences at all?